according to Matthew chapter 23. Then Jesus spoke to the crowds and to the disciples, saying, "The scribes and the Pharisees have seated themselves in the seat of Moses. Therefore, all the things they tell you, do and observe, but do not do according to their deeds, for they say, but do not perform. They bind up heavy loads and put them upon the shoulders of men, but they themselves are not willing to budge them with their finger. All the works they do to be viewed by men, for they broaden the scripture containing cases that they wear as safeguards and enlarge the fringes of their garments. They like the most prominent place at evening meals, and the front seats in the synagogues, and the greetings in the marketplaces, and to be called rabbi by men. But you, do not you be called rabbi, for one is your teacher, whereas all you are brothers. Moreover, do not call anyone your father on earth, for one is your Father, the heavenly one. Neither be called leaders, for your leader is one, the Christ. But the greatest one among you must be your minister. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you shut up the kingdom of the heavens before men. For you yourselves do not go in, neither do you permit those on their way to go in. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you traverse sea and dry land to make one proselyte. And when he becomes one, you make him a subject for Gehenna twice as much so as yourselves. Woe to you, blind guides, who say, if anyone swears by the temple, it is nothing. But if anyone swears by the gold of the temple, he is under obligation. Fools and blind ones, which, in fact, is greater, the gold or the temple that has sanctified the gold? Also, if anyone swears by the altar, it is nothing. But if anyone swears by the gift on it, he is under obligation. Blind ones, which in fact is greater, the gift or the altar that sacrifices the gift? Therefore, he that swears by the altar is swearing by it and by all the things on it. And he that swears by the temple is swearing by it and by him that is inhabiting it. And he that swears by heaven is swearing by the throne of God and by him that is sitting on it. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you give the tenth of the mint and the dill and the cumin, but you have disregarded the weightier matters of the law, namely justice and mercy and faithfulness. These things it was binding to do, yet not to disregard the other things. Blind guides who strain out the gnat, but gulp down the camel. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you cleanse the outside of the cup and of the dish, but inside they are full of plunder and immoderateness. Blind Pharisee, cleanse first the inside of the cup and of the dish, that the outside of it also may become clean. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you resemble whitewashed graves, which outwardly indeed appear beautiful, but inside are full of dead men's bones and of every sort of uncleanness. In that way you also outwardly indeed appear righteous to men, but inside you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you build the graves of the prophets and decorate the memorial tombs of the righteous ones. And you say, if we were in the days of our forefathers, we would not be sharers of them in the blood of the prophets. Therefore, you are bearing witness against yourselves that you are sons of those who murdered the prophets. Well then, fill up the measure of your forefathers. Serpents, offspring of vipers, how are you to flee from the judgment of Gehenna? For this reason, here I am sending forth to you prophets and wise men and public instructors. Some of them you will kill and impale, and some of them you will scourge in your synagogues and persecute from city to city, that there may come upon you all the righteous blood spilled on the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the sanctuary and the altar. Truly, I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the killer of the prophets and the stoner of those sent forth to her. How often I wanted to gather your children together, the way a hen gathers her chicks together under her wings. But you people did not want it. Look, your house is abandoned to you. For I say to you, you will by no means see me from henceforth until you say, blessed is he that comes in Jehovah's name. According to Luke chapters 20 and 21. On one of the days, while he was teaching the people in the temple and declaring the good news, the chief priests and the scribes with the older men came near, and they spoke up, saying to him, tell us, by what authority you do these things, or who it is that gave you this authority? In reply, he said to them, I will also ask you a question, and you tell me, was the baptism of John from heaven or from men? Then among themselves they drew conclusions, saying, if we say from heaven, he will say, why is it you do not believe him? But if we say from men, the people one and all will stone us, for they are persuaded that John was a prophet. So they replied that they did not know its source. And Jesus said to them, neither am I telling you by what authority I do these things. Then he started to tell the people this illustration. A man planted a vineyard and let it out to cultivators, and he traveled abroad for a considerable time. But in due season, he set out a slave to the cultivators, that they might give him some of the fruit of the vineyard. The cultivators, however, sent him away empty after beating him up. But he repeated and sent them a different slave. That one also they beat up and dishonored and sent away empty. Yet again he sent a third. This one also they wounded and threw out. At this, the owner of the vineyard said, what shall I do? I will send my son, the beloved. Likely they will respect this one. When the cultivators caught sight of him, they went reasoning with another, saying, this is the heir. Let us kill him, that the inheritance may become ours. With that, they threw him outside the vineyard and killed him. What, therefore, will the owner of the vineyard do to them? He will come and destroy these cultivators and will give the vineyard to others. On hearing this, they said, never may that happen. But he looked upon them and said, what then does this that is written mean? The stone which the builders rejected, this has become the chief cornerstone. Everyone falling upon that stone will be shattered. As for anyone upon whom it falls, it will pulverize him. The scribes and the chief priests now sought to get their hands on him in that very hour, but they feared the people, for they perceived that he spoke this illustration with them in mind. And after observing him closely, they sent out men secretly hired to pretend that they were righteous in order that they might catch him in speech, so as to turn him over to the government and to the authority of the governor. And they questioned him, saying, Teacher, we know you speak and teach correctly and show no partiality, but you teach the way of God in line with truth. Is it lawful for us to pay tax to Caesar or not? But he detected their cunning and said to them, Show me a denarius. Whose image and inscription does it have? They said, Caesar's. He said to them, By all means then, pay back Caesar's things to Caesar, but God's things to God. Well, they were not able to catch him in this saying before the people, but in amazement at his answer, they said nothing. However, some of the Sadducees, those who say there is no resurrection, came up and questioned him, saying, Teacher, Moses wrote us, if a man's brother dies having a wife, but this one remained childless, his brother should take the wife and raise up offspring from her for his brother. Accordingly, there were 7 brothers, and the first took a wife, and died childless. So the second and the third took her. Likewise, even the 7, they did not leave children behind, but died off. Lastly, the woman also died. Consequently, in the resurrection, of which one of them does she become the wife? For the 7 got her as wife. Jesus said to them, the children of this system of things marry, and are given in marriage. But those who have been counted worthy of gaining that system of things and the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage. In fact, neither can they die anymore, for they are like the angels, and they are God's children by being children of the resurrection. But that the dead are raised up, even Moses disclosed in the account about the thorn bush, when he calls Jehovah the God of Abraham and God of Isaac and God of Jacob. He is a God, not of the dead, but of the living, for they are all living to him. In response, some of the scribes said, Teacher, you spoke well. For no longer did they have the courage to ask him a single question. In turn, he said to them, How is it they say that the Christ is David's son? For David himself says in the book of Psalms, Jehovah said to my Lord, Sit at my right hand until I place your enemies as a stool for your feet. David, therefore, calls him Lord, so how is he his son? Then, while all the people were listening, he said to the disciples, Look out for the scribes who desire to walk around in robes, and like greetings in the marketplaces, and front seats in the synagogues, and most prominent places at evening meals, and who devour the houses of the widows, and for a pretext make long prayers. These will receive a heavier judgment. Now as he looked up, he saw the rich dropping their gifts into the treasury chest. Then he saw a certain needy widow drop 2 small coins of very little value there, and he said, I tell you truthfully, this widow, although poor, dropped in